AMD's GCN3 architecture was a thing that happened. Shocking, I know. If you were a Team Red enthusiast in the 2010s, you probably bought yourself a GCN2 and then fell into a boredom-induced coma until around the time Vega came out. But Vega was a GCN5, and thanks to my incredible brain, I can deduce that means there was also a GCN4 and, indeed, a GCN3. As this series of videos, entitled Tales from the Scalper Pandemic, is principally about extending the value of graphics cards in a time where prices have skyrocketed, in this video I am, of course, looking at the cheapest one. As is AMD's wont, the R9 380 was a rebrand of an earlier card, in this case the rather short-lived R9 285. Like most mid-range cards of the day, the 380 needs more power than a similarly performing newer GPU, demanding two PCIe connectors from at least a 450W PSU, and more realistically something like a 600W to be on the safe side. The version I have here, a rather handsome Sapphire Nitro model with metal backplate and monochrome colour scheme that ticks all of my personal aesthetic boxes, has 4GB of VRAM. This was one of the few distinguishing features of the 300 series over their 200 series predecessors. While Nvidia arguably underplayed the importance of video memory capacity in this era, and later, AMD were quite liberal with their distribution of VRAM to the masses. That, along with their early adoption of DirectX 12 and Vulkan APIs, and their architecture's famous longevity, should have meant that the R9 380 still has something to offer gamers in 2021. Of course, since the recent announcement of the retirement of GCNs 1 through 3, that longevity has come to an abrupt end, and this GPU, among others, will miss out on vital compatibility and performance updates for new titles. With this in mind, it's hard to make an unreserved recommendation for the R9 380, except as a stopgap until new parts become more available. Today I'll be running the card through its paces on my reasonably priced gaming PC, featuring a basic but powerful Ryzen 3 3100 and 16GB of DDR4 3000 in some modern games to see how good of a stopgap it really is. The latest title on the menu today is a renowned VRAM hog. At 1080 using the balanced preset, Resident Evil Village will smash through this card's 4GB frame buffer limit. For my test, I dropped the texture resolution to just 256MB and enabled interlaced rendering, though swapping the latter for ultra quality FSR is another viable option. As it is, my chosen settings stayed above 60fps and averaged close to 80. Doom Eternal has proven to play very nicely with older GCN cards, and this remains true here. The R9 380 offers a very healthy 80fps average at 1080 low settings, not dipping below 60 even when things turn a bit hectic. You may even have room to turn the quality up if you so desire, and don't mind risking some dips below 60 when there's more going on. Apologies for the inaccurate footage, my capture card crapped itself trying to record this game for some reason. The R9 380's predecessor, the 280, could manage to run Horizon Zero Dawn at a fairly playable 37fps at 720 original settings. The 380 manages to one-up this by offering similar performance, only with a resolution set to 1080. The option, of course, remains to drop to 900 or 720 if this is too slow for you, but it's such a pretty game. It's possible to spot Cyberpunk gameplay from a mile away, even at 1080 low settings. The R9 380 can deliver 35fps on average, which is certainly better than last-gen base console performance. If you were curious to see if it could look a little more breathtaking, I'm afraid medium settings drops down to 26fps. Some resolution scale tweaking would be necessary to bring things up to a solid and sturdy 30. Watch Dogs Legion didn't need much in the way of quality sacrifices to reach a 42 FPS average, managing to do so at 1080 medium settings. While this isn't a terrible result, this card's successor, the 4GB RX 480, scores about 40% higher. Stay tuned to the channel for more on that card in the coming weeks. Valhalla was the first game that I came across that refused to run on GCN-1 based cards, so this is perhaps the cheapest older Radeon I've tested in this game so far. To be fair, it's done a pretty good job. 1080 medium manages to average over 40 FPS, and of course there's always the option of dropping to 720 if you prefer closer to 60. I sincerely hope someone out there enjoys Enlisted and gets some value from my benchmarks, because I really don't enjoy playing it. Let me know in the comments if I should keep testing it or if I should switch to something else. Anyway, the R9 380 manages a smooth 72 FPS average at 1080 medium settings. The R9 380 would be a pretty excellent choice for Apex Legends, as it manages to keep a solid 60 FPS average and 1% lows down into the 40s, even at 1080 with settings cranked up. Of course, the game doesn't need to look this pretty, so dropping to medium or low should be all that's required to gain a more competitive frame rate. Warzone also works really well on the 380, with 1080 low coming close to 70 FPS on average. Thanks to the extra VRAM, I pushed texture quality up from low to normal, and for once it seems like textures were actually loading. If you're looking for a cheaper, older GPU that doesn't make Warzone look like absolute crap, this could be a contender. Fortnite isn't a particularly tough challenge for GPUs these days, especially if you prefer to play at competitive settings. At 1080, the R9 380 can almost max out my 144Hz monitor, averaging 142 with lows of 74. If you prefer high settings, alas, the 380 falls just short of 60 FPS, though some minor tweaks should be all that's required to get you there. Rocket League is also no challenge for the R9 380, giving over 120 FPS average, even at 1080 with settings maxed out. I scored 2 own goals in this match, so moving on. My favourite game in the test suite right now, Forza Horizon 4, looks amazing at 1080 high and runs pretty smoothly too, averaging 70 FPS and not dipping below 60, though if you already have an R9 280, this isn't much of an upgrade. So, is the R9 380 a good card to hold you over until the end of the Scalper Pandemic? Well, yeah, it really is. Unlike the 280, it can run DX12 exclusive titles like Valhalla, and only Cyberpunk and Horizon were slight letdowns in terms of performance. That, of course, could be a sign of things to come, but hopefully by the time the next hyped up release comes out, you'll have managed to get a hold of that 3060 or 6600 XT or whatever. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.